When my daughter sprang the notion of bringing all of her American Girl dolls with us on the trip to New York City to celebrate her birthday, I initially had the same reaction you did. No way am I paying an extra $50 to check a bag full of 5 overpriced dolls already with our other overstuffed luggage. And less way am I carrying them all on the way through security and down the squished center aisle of the plane, only to stuff them under the seat in front of me where my pedicured feet should be. But then my daughter, who almost never cries, started to get choked up by the thought of leaving any one of her dolls behind on the trip she's been anticipating for months. How could she possibly choose? How could she decide to take only her oldest doll when it's not the others' fault that they had joined our family later? How could she possibly come back home and tell the dolls who hadn't gone on the trip how wonderful it had been without hurting their feelings? Before I became a mother, I never would have considered how a doll's feelings might be affected by a missed vacation. When did it happen to you? When did you become a mother or a father? At what exact point in time did you change? A year, a month, a minute after the birth? Maybe you felt it after the last push or when the scalpel finally severed the cord. For me, it was about a week after that, as I found myself in a small, tiled hospital ER room the size of a dog kennel, holding down my writhing daughter as an intern tried to coax precious drops of blood out of her tiny left heel. My mother sat silently in a chair nearby. Until then, in the fog of new motherhood, it had just felt like I was playing house with someone else's doll. But there in that room I hope never to be in again, it happened to me, and I stopped living for myself before any other. It was a pretty clear line of demarcation. One minute I was still worried about how long it would be before I could resume my daily run, and the next I was completely overtaken by the thought that my child might somehow fade away before my very eyes, shrinking tinier and tinier until she would just evaporate, as if a dream. Seems she wasn't getting enough nutrition from my feeble attempts to feed her from my own body and had lost a full pound in her 1-week-long life. So the doctors had ordered blood work in the hope of discovering a reason for her weight loss. My daughter's condition was nothing life or death threatening, nothing near the severity facing parents of gravely ill children, but still for me it seemed as such. Thankfully, the specifics of the situation escape me now, but what I do remember for certain is the sound of her feeble cry echoing down the hospital hallway like a bleeding sheep in a sterile wasteland, and the hand my mother laid on mine without a word, pressing silently on me all the weight of motherhood that only those who have crossed the line can feel. I picked my daughter up then as soon as the intern had left, torturous vial in hand, and held her close between the very breasts that could not nourish her enough, whispering in sounds that only a mother can make and only her infant can hear, promising that no one would ever hurt her again. It was a hollow promise, I knew, but I was making it for me, not for her. I don't know exactly how long I stood there in that room. But I do know that when I walked out, I was different. It had happened, and there was no turning back, and I didn't want to. Years later, faced with figuring out a better way to convince my daughter that only one doll could make the trip to New York City, I began to wonder how I'd become a mother who didn't remember a time when I believed my dolls had feelings that were really reflections of those inside myself, too precious to voice except through the mouth of a doll. How could I have forgotten? And why on earth did I ever want to? So when you begin to whisper to your travel mates behind us about how indulged children are today as you stand in the TSA line, I hope you will see a girl whose parents understand that she'll only be 8 years old once and believe that her dolls have feelings that would be hurt if any one of them were left out. And I hope that I'll be the parent who's confident enough in the latter to smile back at your disgusted parents these days faces and clench the bag full of dolls hanging heavily on my shoulder even tighter, protecting the precious cargo I carry along with the memories about to be made.